BYU football promotes Kelly Poppinga as the program's new defensive coordinator. We saw him tonight at the Marriott Center getting recognized along with the Pop-Tart Bowl champion and long list of guys that have planned to run it back in 2026 or locked in for next season. Mitch, Harper, Kyle Ireland with KSL Sports, host of Cougar Sports Saturday and Cougar Tracks daily on KSLSports.com. But Kelly Poppinga, new defensive coordinator, replacing Jay Hill. Kyle, your thoughts on K-Pop getting his golden moment? Yes, I did. Yes, that was the pun. The pun was intentional. Gets his moment to be K-Pop demon hunter of this defense. Your thoughts on K-Pop?
I like the promotion. I like the move from Kalani Sitake, and I think that having continuity with that position can bode well for them as far as keeping guys in the program, continuing the success they've had the last few years. Obviously, Kelly was a star linebacker and played here, passionate about BYU. His brother played here. It's a family thing for them with BYU, and he's had multiple stints here as a coach, and so being able to rise up the ranks in the coaching ladder as he's entered that phase of his life and his career after playing the position of linebacker at BYU, it's fun to see. And so I like the addition, but I do like the fact that there is some continuity there. There's success, but there's also going to be, we were talking earlier tonight, there's expectations now after what BYU has had as far as the level of success was raised from 24 to 25. It's going to be the same as 25 to 26 now, and so Kelly's stepping into some big shoes that Jay Hill left. But I think that there's an element where he was a co-DC before in his career at Virginia, and so there's an element where some familiarity with the position, but definitely a step up. And so being able to have those expectations, he's going to have to meet that challenge.
The pros of this promotion of Kelly Poppinga to me is, one, he's a BYU guy through and through, and I think it elevates his resume that if 10 years from now, if Kalani's ready to retire and hang it up, maybe K-Pop's that guy again. And that's a long time because Kalani Sitake is the long-term answer for BYU football. So you don't think in those thoughts. But I like the fact that Kelly Poppinga loves BYU. And I think that's big. I mean, that sort of thing doesn't matter at most institutions. I think at BYU it's a thing where it's like if you're a BYU guy, it hits a little different. It does. But I think also the retention piece, it's been a big thing with the roster and the players. It's also big with the coaching staff. Gary Anderson, I thought, gave a very enlightening interview with Hans and Scotty G on our sibling station, the KSL Sports Zone, last week, talking about there's a foundation in place. And these coaches feel confident that they can run and take it to greater heights, what Jay Hill built, and they got to take it to a higher level. And that's the challenge in front of them. But I like that there was a foundation in place, so I'm okay with going internal and promoting from within. I'm usually, the con to me, though, with this type of move is when you lose a guy that had such a big resume, head coach resume, big impact on the program, you typically want to get that sort of resume matched again. Like with Michigan, they lose Jim Harbaugh, they just hand it off to Sharon Moore. Just because there's continuity and retention doesn't guarantee that it's automatically going to be successful. Typically, I mean, a place like Michigan, you should have probably hired Kyle Whittingham after Jim Harbaugh was gone to lose a big coach, get a big-time coach again. That's the only thing that makes me pause a little bit, where you say, do you want to go do the same thing again like you did last time with Jay Hill and get a guy that's got head coach background, maybe do something along those lines? But at the same time, Kelly Poppinga has been around BYU football for such a long time, and he knows the personnel in this program. I was talking to him during bowl prep, going over the defensive end room and the talent, where they feel like they're at a point where they don't need to add to that group. They feel confident with the players that they have in the building. Now, we'll see how it all plays out, but you got to give him credit for building up that position group and retaining these guys and getting them locked in, like the Kenny Laufonahema today, who comes out and says he's going to stay at BYU. I thought that's kind of a good win because Jay Hill recruited him extensively from Springfield High School. He's coming and he's going to stay retained with Kelly Poppinga. So I like the move. I think it's fine. And I think that also promoting Sione Puha to associate head coach I thought was noteworthy too. And then, of course, DeMario Warren comes from Boise State. Now he's the defensive passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach, former Southern Utah head coach. It's a pretty good staff. And there's head coaching experience. There's a lot of defensive years in that defensive staff still. And I think that's what's exciting about retaining and promoting from within.
Yeah, I would say that as you were talking about some cons, maybe one that popped up for me is the fact that you're moving K-Pop over from special teams coordinator. And I thought he did a really nice job in that role. And so
fourth in S&P Plus in 2024.
And being able to find somebody to be a new special teams coordinator, which was not part of today's announcements at all. Yeah. And so being able to have somebody who can fill K-Pop's shoes now that he's moved over into a new role, that is something that I would, just want to keep an eye on as far as who the next guy is to come into that position. But I do like the fact that you mentioned, he's a BYU guy. Both coordinators right now, BYU guys. Head coach, BYU guy. There's a lot of just BYU love, former BYU players that understand the ins and outs of this program, and mixing that in with head coaching experience, guys who have, K-Pop, co-DC at Virginia. Like, they've been around the block a little bit. And so I do feel, it's not like you were just taking somebody who was a GA 2 years ago or something like that, making him a DC. So that does make me feel, a little bit more comforted in the move as well.
And I think also, too, Kelly Poppinga, good resume, been at Virginia, Boise State, BYU, comes from the Bronco Mendenhall, worked for Coach Mendenhall. I mean, he was a player for Coach Mendenhall and won Mount West titles. But I think he's got a lot of unique experience in coaching with his recruiting backgrounds in Virginia. I mean, he had to go up and down the East Coast and tap into parts of the country that he probably had no connections to, and battle with a lot of schools to get talent. So I think that can be exciting. And he's aggressive too. He's going to have that same relentless mindset that Jay Hill did. I think he's going to be aggressive with the roster. He's not going to just stand pat. When he talks about the defensive ends, feeling good about where it's at, if you can always get someone better, I expect that he's going to have that same mindset still. So I'm excited about it. I think, this BYU football team, expectations should be high. And I don't think people should be afraid of that. I think sometimes Cougar fans hear expectations for BYU football. Even, we talked about BYU basketball earlier tonight, but BYU football, and they just get scared because they're an underdog, and that's where they live, and that's where the best seasons usually come. 84 this year, 2024. I mean, 96, you can go on and on. There's so many examples when BYU's the underdog, magic really happens and these special seasons occur. 2007 when K-Pop was there. But I think that this group, 23 wins the last 2 years, you got to go break through. And just retaining these guys, it's not glamorous in terms of transfer portal additions, but retaining these guys is not cheap. With NIL and the resources it takes to retain an Isaiah Glasker, to retain a Falatau Satawala. So you better go out and win. And it's high expectations. And look, that's the name of the game now. And these guys know it. And I think Kelly Poppinga knows it. And I'm excited to see how this all comes together. But one thing that I always have been impressed by with BYU football under Kalani Sitake is that when changes do happen, BYU tends to have a little bit of a level up. And, I think when they had Elisa Tuiaki, I think so many Cougar fans think all the Elisa Tuiaki years were so bad. They were not. They weren't. 2022, it was absolute rock bottom. And I agree with you. I thought it was one of the worst defenses in college football. And Jay Hill stepped in at a very low point for the program defensively. But there were many years in the early years under Kalani Sitake where, top 25, top 50, like solid, not elite, but solid. And I think that there's been enough of years under Kalani Sitake where you go, you're going to at least be solid. And I think now, I like the fact that, you go to an odd front with what you saw with Jay Hill last year. You probably continue that going forward. I mean, Kelly Poppinga was well-versed in the 3-4, 3-3-5 to an extension with Bronco Mendenhall. I like the versatility. He could throw out a lot of different stuff there. And I think he'll be an aggressive guy too. And, Brady Poppinga was his older brother and played in the NFL, and he had some tweet on X. What did Brady say about this move?
Yeah, he said, I know he's my brother, but there's not better coach to take on this and to continue the excellent defenses that we've had over the last couple of years, calling an ace an ace.
I'm excited. I think that I think Kelly Poppinga is ready. And look, he's been coaching now since what, 2009? So that's 17 years ago. It's his time. And, he was a co-defensive coordinator at Virginia. So I'm excited to see what he becomes. I'm also excited for DeMario Warren. He mentored General Guilford. Guilford was on his staff at Southern Utah. And now the guy that was the mentor is now coming to BYU staff while the mentee is going to Michigan. I think that's a good addition. California connections there with DeMario Warren, but also knows the state of Utah too. I like that move as well. I think that's a good hire by BYU.
Yeah, and I do think that you've seen as Kalani's built out his staff over the 10 years he's been here, he's relied on a lot of guys that have been head coaches before, because having those guys to rely on, and I think that the retention of Gary Anderson, you mentioned that interview, like that can't be
it's a great
overstated
point.
At all.
As an analyst.
Just as an analyst, being able to be there where, hey, he's been a DC, he's been a head coach at multiple stops, he's worked with Kalani Sitake and now with K-Pop for a number of years. To be able to have K-Pop fill into this new role, have other head coaches and other defensive guys that have been around the block for a long time, be able to kind of mentor him as he kind of molds into whatever the next phase of this BYU defense is. I think that is really a positive step as well. I will say though, you talk about K-Pop being aggressive, and I do think that that does go back to his playing days as well, for sure. And just like the Poppinga family.
Yeah.
And
it's in their DNA.
There. Yeah, for sure. I am curious, if you had to say maybe one thing just off of knowing K-Pop and how the defense has looked over the last 3 years with Jay Hill, what would you be predicting as far as something that you would expect Jay and his defense, and now K-Pop and this defense, how it's going to be a massive change maybe of any sort?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I believe will be in play with Kelly Poppinga is that they're going to be prepared. I think that's been something that stands out with the special teams group, is that the readiness, the prepared level. I mean, they've thrown a lot of specials. The special teams they will try a lot of different things. And I think, again, they're going to be a very prepared group. And I think that also, too, that, Kelly Poppinga has been a guy that said in the past that sacks don't matter. And look, they probably don't, because you could argue that the 2024 defense was better than the 2025 one. The 2025 defense had a lot more sacks. I think 30 sacks this past season, 61st nationally, which still nothing glamorous. But by BYU standards, what Cougar fans have seen the past, really 10 years, that number of sacks makes you go, whoa, 30 sacks, are you kidding me? But I think that one of the things that you're going to see a lot of length in the secondary personnel, like the makeup of the personnel, what you've already got on the roster. That's what Kelly Poppinga wants. But I think it's also a little bit of maybe taking the best of the Bronco Mendenhall years, taking the best of Jay Hill's years, taking the best of what they did with Elisa Tuiaki. Like, he's got a lot of different reference points, and he's got a great defensive coordinator on the staff with Kalani Sitake, who knows defensive football. Like, they've got a lot of great defensive minds in this program that what they did this past year might not necessarily be the case this upcoming year. And I think Kelly Poppinga, one of the strengths of Aaron Roderick on the offensive side is adjusting an offensive scheme to your quarterback. I think for the defense, adjusting it to your key players and to their strengths. I mean, Aaron Roderick has done that time and time again with his quarterbacks. You think about all the different QBs that BYU's had in these last, 5 or 6 years with A-Rod. It's pretty different styles, and you're changing things up stylistically a little bit. The foundation, the vision of what you want to be is always going to be there. That remains consistent, but A-Rod changes it up. When you got a big-bodied quarterback like Bear Bachmeier, you're going to do things a little bit differently. And so I think Kelly Poppinga will adjust, but I think he'll be a good brand of football, and I think it'll be one that recruits and transfers want to be a part of. And I think what's so exciting about BYU football right now, as we kind of start to wind this thing down, is that it's just in a place where I don't know if it's ever going to lead to a national title. Like, I don't know. I mean, because it seems like the powers that be in the sport will, for whatever lack of a better term, will always kind of try to prevent that for BYU. I don't know. Unless there's automatic qualifiers, I don't know what the path is for BYU, to be quite honest with you. But I think that I like that BYU just wants to keep taking shot after shot after shot. And I think that's exciting for BYU fans. Again, I've always stayed consistent. BYU fans, they don't measure things on titles. They want to just always be in the mix and have a brand of football and any sport that's just high level, competitive, that on any given Saturday, they can go win a game. And I think BYU is in that space right now. And that's exciting. And that leaves Cougar fans to feel like, you know what? Anything's possible. And I think that's all you can hope for in this day and age of college sports where you're like, oh my gosh, like there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. BYU, I feel like they're like embracing all this new era, and it leads to exciting times.
Yeah, another thing that was exciting tonight. I mean, wasn't like surprising news or anything, but you mentioned Bear Bachmeier.
We buried the lead, baby.
Bear Bachmeier announces on social media that he's running it back, just like Glasgow and.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that? I mean, I know there's been a lot of them, and so, like Jove Sidamuni, Kinala Fonahema, like there's some guys you go, did you need to do that? I don't know. Nusi Taumaipeau, he's a sophomore. Like, did he need to do that? But just your thoughts on like just guys that aren't facing an NFL decision, having to say, run it back.
I think that's the big key.
Yeah.
If you're not facing an NFL decision, then I don't really understand the point.
Yeah.
Unless you entered the transfer portal and then you're announcing that you're coming back out of it to stay at BYU. A guy like Glasgow makes perfect sense.
No question.
LJ Martin. That would be a perfect situation.
Would have loved to have seen that tonight.
Right.
Would have loved that.
Bear Bachmeier thought he was coming back.
Yeah.
Didn't have a reason to think otherwise. And so, it's nice. It's fun news. And, I love football, and so having it be part of the conversation. BYU fans love the quarterback talk, so I love it.
I do think, though, and to Keanu Tanavasa, who had the mic, and some company needs to, he's going to be a motivational speaker one day.
Oh, yeah.
Keanu Tanavasa is going to be a motivational speaker. But he's, talking about how the most common question he's gotten since the Pop-Tarts Bowl is Bear Bachmeier coming back? And you know what? I don't doubt that. A lot of Cougar fans have been asking, is Bear coming back? I mean, at New Year's Day, I'm at bowling with family. Is Bear coming back? I'm like, what are we doing, folks?
Wouldn't it be different though if A-Rod was gone or Kalani was gone?
That's what I'm saying.
Everything hasn't, everything is not completely different than it was at the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
I know, and I just think, so in that sense, because everyone just assumes everyone's gone in this transfer portal era that we're in, it probably needs to be done. But I would like to see a point in college football where we don't need to say, hey, this player's re-signed. Oh, this player's done this. But hey, Bear honestly, I don't need to do this. He loves BYU. I think he is loving the BYU experience, but at the same time, he probably doesn't want to deal with the questions either. So send, publish, run it back, and I'll see you in 2026. I'm excited about Bear.
Last thing from me, what'd you think of the Super Y from PK tonight?
Oh my goodness. The Super Y is a movement. Chase Roberts.
He started something.
How did this not become a thing? 10 years ago, this month, Kalani Sitake took this court, and he had a white quarter zip, and he, threw up the Shaka Y, and that had people going, oh, we're doing this. We're doing the Shaka Y. And so that then became a thing because of Kalani and his staff saying, he introduced him. The Rowdy Rock is what he said 10 years ago. Now, with Chase Roberts and his 17-yard touchdown, 22-yard touchdown, I can't remember, against Utah in the second quarter this past October, he does the Super Y moment, and it's just started a movement. The soccer team did it. I liked it. Parker, I thought the energy, the momentum that they had in that, you're even seeing Brian Santiago, he's bending down going, ooh, throwing that Super Y, so I'm here for it. I think Cougar fans are on board, and look, I'm on board too. I'm usually an anti-college hand sign guy because I feel like I'm getting to that. I don't want to call myself a boomer because I'm not. I'm a millennial. But I'm getting to that point where, hey, I grew up in a time when, Wisconsin didn't do this, when Utah didn't do this, when BYU didn't do this. I lived in that space. That did exist. But hey, if we're here for it and we get the clout and the social media, I'm all for it. Get the aura. Add to the aura. I mean, when I'm seeing Rider Lions doing this, the aura, we all need to get aura. Let's get the aura with Super Wise.
I like it. I think I'm gonna have to work on my form though.
Yeah,
I'm not there yet.
My pinky's very weird in my hand. I can't throw a good Y.
Execution was on point. Parker tonight, great job. We'll see how many guys break out next season.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun year for BYU football, that's for sure. We'll have you covered on Cougar Sports Saturday every week throughout the off season, noon to 3, and on Cougar Tracks daily. talking all things BYU football every single day. I kind of love this time of the year, to be quite honest with you, because I'm just getting neck deep into like way too early outlooks, because when January 16th hits, man, and that day's done, oh my goodness, we're going neck deep in way too early stuff. Like, it's happening, people. So get ready for that, and we're going to get after it. So signing off from Provo, Kyle Ireland, Mitch Harper. Talk to you next time. How long was that? Oh my gosh.